How's it going? My name's Mei-Li. Hey, as Keelan said, I'm a mechanical design engineer on the James Webb. I would like to start sharing my screen with you guys. There we go. Hopefully everybody can see it. Welcome. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much to Keelan and Lindsay for the invite. I'm very excited to share a little bit more about the James Webb Space Telescope technology and also how space technology can actually be used for good. So I'll do a quick introduction on myself. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. Growing up, when I was in high school, my favorite subjects were always visual arts like ceramics and painting and math at the same time. I didn't know I wanted to be an engineer in high school. My high school just didn't have programs that introduced me to engineering or what it really was. So it wasn't until I went to the University of San Diego that I was introduced to engineering, and I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering because what I found was that engineering is actually a fantastic blend of art and math. There's a whole design aspect and creativity to engineering, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But while I was in college, I interned at Northrop Grumman on the James Webb Space Telescope, and that was the first time that I was introduced to aerospace engineering. The first time I learned about the James Webb, and I loved it so much during that internship that after I graduated, I got a job full-time at Northrop. During my first couple years there, I also went back to school and I got my master's degree in engineering management at UCLA. Outside of engineering, I also love to rock climb and hike and really anything outdoors. I love to be outside. And another project that I'm really passionate about is my nonprofit called Atuero, which helps persons with disabilities, specifically in underdeveloped areas. We design pit latrine assistive devices for people who might need help doing basic functions by themselves. So right now we work in Uganda. I've been there quite a few times on different research trips, and it's just something that, you know, is my passion outside of my engineering job. So I wanted to start with, what is engineering? And if you already know the answer to this question, then you are ahead of where I was at your age. Engineering is the application of math and science to design, build, and use new or improved technology. I like to think of it like scientists ask why and engineers ask how. So how can we apply technology to help the human body? How can we make a plane, train, car more efficient? How can we help the environment with what currently exists in the technology realm? Engineers are basically just professional problem solvers. What every engineer does day in, day out is solve different problems. And there are a lot of types of engineering. So there's civil engineering, which is helping with buildings. Mechanical is pretty broad. It has to do with anything that has mechanical components. Electrical engineering, chemical, and these days there are a lot more exciting fields like biomedical and biological engineering. So basically, if there's a science that you like that science, then there's most likely an engineering that goes along with it. Okay, next I wanted to give you some facts about the current largest space telescope that's orbiting around Earth, and that is the Hubble Space Telescope. It was launched in 1990, so it's been gathering data for us for over 30 years. It orbits 340 miles above Earth, which is actually pretty close. It's about a third of the distance between here and the moon. And that means that it's close enough for astronauts to go and fix it and repair it if things break, which I think NASA has done like 5 or 6 times now. The Hubble can see optical or visible light, which is the same sort of light that our eyes can see. I think the coolest discovery that the Hubble has for us is that there are 10,000 galaxies in every part of the sky that is the size of a drinking straw, which means that if you look through a drinking straw at the sky, you're looking at 10,000 different galaxies. And that fact alone is kind of what inspired the James Webb Space Telescope and more research to be done behind what's actually out there. Okay, I wanted to give a quick intro video. It's a video that was made by NASA called Into the Unknown.
We tried some things that many people said was impossible, but we've achieved that, and we wish Hubble the very best.
The Hubble Space Telescope achieved its greatest performance yet, looking for when and how the universe began.
With the Hubble, we made incredible discoveries. We measured the age of the universe. The discovery of dark energy was actually confirmed by Hubble. People argued about whether black holes were in the center of the galaxies. We found black holes everywhere. It told us amazing things. But as we look deeper and deeper and deeper with the Hubble Space Telescope, we come to the end of what the Hubble can see. We just see darkness. We realized we should build the largest space telescope humanity has ever conceived of. This is the next generation space telescope. It's Hubble 2.0. And we have 1,000 people working on this project right now. And that all comes together on a launch pad. If it works, it's going to see deeper into space than any other telescope in history.
So if that intro interested you, please feel free to watch the rest of that. There's about 35 more minutes. You can watch that on NASA's or Northrop Grumman's website. Just search Into the Unknown. It goes into a lot more fun facts about the James Webb, which I've also summarized here. The James Webb is 100 times more powerful than the Hubble telescope. And its sun shield is about the size of a tennis court, which the sun shield, if you see in the bottom right-hand picture, is the aluminum foil trampoline looking thing. That's the sun shield, and that alone is the size of a tennis court. It will use infrared technology to look back in time over 3.5 billion years. And I'll talk a little bit about the look back in time portion, but I wanted to touch on the infrared technology, which is basically like if you are sitting in a chair and then you get up out of the chair is a little bit warmer than it was before you sat down, and that is your heat signature being left on the chair. And infrared technology can actually visibly see that heat signature that you've left behind. It orbits, this James Webb orbits 1 million miles from Earth. And from its position in space, if you were to face the James Webb Space Telescope back at Earth, it would be able to read the heat signature with its infrared technology of a bee on a flower. So that's how powerful the infrared technology on the Space Telescope is. On one side of the sun shield, it's about -400 degrees Fahrenheit, and on the other side, it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's a 600-degree differential, which, you know, on Earth, weather-wise, we see maybe 100 degrees, 150 degrees. So there's a huge differential between each side of the sun shield. It's so big, the actual telescope, which is the yellow part that you see in the picture below, it's so large that we actually had to design a way to fold it up so that it fits in a rocket. And it'll unfold once it's in orbit. And it's set to launch at the end of this year, so that's something we can all look forward to. Okay, now back to some of the technology behind how telescopes like Hubble and James Webb work. The farther away an object is, the longer it takes for the light to reach us. So for example, light from the sun actually takes about 8 minutes to reach Earth, which means that when you see sunlight, you're actually seeing light that's about 8 minutes old. When a telescope like the Hubble or the James Webb take a picture, its mirrors are collecting light that have traveled so far, it's potentially taken millions of years to reach the telescope. So for all intensive purposes, these telescopes are like time machines. Okay, and then I quickly wanted to touch on some major differences between the Hubble and the James Webb. The top left-hand picture, you see two images side by side. The leftmost one is a picture that the Hubble took. You can still see the faraway galaxies and stars, but the view is pretty clouded by space debris and space clouds. So the picture to the right of that is what we expect to be able to see with the James Webb. And because it's reading heat signatures and using its infrared technology, it can see right through all of the space clouds that exist. To the right of that picture on the top is just for scale. You can see how big a human is in comparison to that gray disk, which is the collection area of the Hubble's telescope. And then that's compared to the collection area of the mirrors of the James Webb Space Telescope, so it's much, much bigger. The bottom picture is for reference where each of the telescopes are going to exist in space. So you see the Hubble orbits around Earth, shown in that blue circle that's around Earth there. The moon is towards the middle of the screen, and then all the way to the right of the screen, you can see the Lagrange 2 orbit, which is where the James Webb will be once it reaches its orbit pattern. So it's going a lot further than we've ever gone before. I wanted to touch on my role on the James Webb Space Telescope. So as I explained, I'm a mechanical design engineer. I specifically work for the mechanical ground system engineering team. My current role is to help design hardware and fixtures and systems that aid in the testing and integration of different parts of the James Webb. So that basically means the sun shield, that as we saw earlier, when it deploys in space, we want to make sure that we can deploy it and that everything goes well, right? Because this is going to be, the James Webb is going to be so far that we'll never be able to send somebody to go fix it. So we want to make sure that everything works 100% correctly while we're here on the ground. And to test it like it's going to deploy in space, we need to simulate the conditions in space, which are things like temperature and zero gravity and everything. So when we're testing the sun shield down on Earth, we need to simulate zero gravity. And my department designs the fixtures and the systems that help simulate zero gravity and other conditions in space. Now I wanted to jump into talking about space technology as it relates to global development. So in 1967, several countries signed on to the Outer Space Treaty, which reads, "The exploration and use of outer space should be carried on for the benefit of all peoples, irrespective of their degree of economic or scientific development." And basically, the reason why this treaty came to be was because it was recognized that space technology can actually be used to assist in many aspects of global development. Space technology has a lot of applications to help with society's development. Some examples are the satellites that are in space help determine weather patterns and ocean patterns, and so they can help with climate change and environmental impacts. They also, satellites help a lot with communication. And I know that water filters also the most modern water filters were actually designed for astronauts in space. So there's a lot of different space technologies that relate to development here on Earth as well. And to be successful at solving any of these problems, any mission, it's important to look at the problem through multiple lenses. And to do that, diversity is pretty much a necessity. If you have the same sort of person with the same mindset, all coming from the same background, looking through the same lens, you're not going to get the plethora of ideas when you're brainstorming that are necessary to solve these huge issues. So diversity on a team that are solving these issues is very, very important. There's still more work to be done to remove barriers that limit benefits of space to some people. So we need to make sure that the team that's producing the space technology is inclusive and everyone has an equal opportunity to get there. But we also need to make sure that we think about the societal impact of the technology and make sure that we're listening to the communities around the world and ask, you know, what would you guys like to do with this technology as well? I know that there needs to be programmatic and systematic changes within aerospace companies to increase diversity and make themselves more appealing to minority groups. I know, speaking just from my experience at my company, in the midst of the recent killing of George Floyd, my company made one of the first links on their homepage a link to a social justice page where our Black employees would be able to find resources and everybody would be able to learn a little bit more about social justice and what it means, especially within the aerospace industry. My company's promised to do more with making the playing field a little bit more even. One of the things that they've promised to do is make sure that they're not recruiting from the same schools over and over. They're branching out and making sure that they reach other universities as well when they're recruiting. So there's still a lot more work to be done though, across the board and especially in the aerospace industry. I think what's most important is that engineers need to consider who benefits and who suffers from technology whenever it's being created. And that can apply to space technology as well, absolutely, because it has such a broad application and has such potential to help across the board with many social and economic issues. I think in the case of the James Webb has potential to help everybody because it's going to answer some really important questions about the universe, about our place in the universe, and what there really is out there. So. Is there any questions for me so far?
I had one question.
Sure.
I guess it's just more, I'm just curious, just about like how much bigger the newer telescope is versus the older one, the one that the human was standing near.
Oh yeah, we can go back to that slide.
It seems a lot, definitely.
Yeah. So you know, a human stands like about let's see, you can see like a human standing next to the collection area of the Hubble Space Telescope, which you can't see it here really, but I'm pretty sure it's like 2.5 meters in diameter. So it's about, 2.5 meters, so like 10 feet, maybe a little less than that. And then the James Webb Space Telescope is 6.5 meters. So it's over double the size collection area, but the telescope technology itself is about 100 times more powerful, which means that it can see 100 times further. In specifically, it's seeing infrared light, which is on a different place than the light wavelengths.
I have a question.
Sure.
So when you're recreating like the space conditions, is there like just different departments that have like different roles in it? Like, is your department only recreating like zero gravity, and then there's another department recreating like travel speed or velocity?
So my department, yes, that's pretty much true. You're pretty much right on. There's different departments for different tests, basically. Like, for example, I was talking about the temperature differential on either side of the sun shield. Well, we have an entire department that's our thermal design engineering, which is they're the ones in charge of simulating the temperature differences to make sure that every subsystem on the telescope can it can withstand the temperatures that it's going to be seeing in space. My department works kind of with those departments. You know, engineering is a very collaborative career. You have to be able to work with a lot of people and work together to solve issues. So my team would work with like the thermal engineering team, and we would make sure that we design fixtures. My department is the one that designs like the fixtures that might be like holding the James Webb Space Telescope when it goes into thermal testing. And so yeah, so there are different departments, and it kind of just depends on which test is going to be going on the telescope, which departments have the biggest role in them. But mechanical ground systems engineering is pretty broad. It covers anything that's basically not the flight hardware. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Can I ask, what would you say someone who's interested in this field would want to be focusing on in high school? Like, what's the best path?
Sure.
How good has your math got to be? That kind of thing.
Okay, yeah, I like that question. I will actually go to this slide, which is some advice for future engineers to answer that. So if you're interested in pursuing a career in space technology or in engineering in general, my first piece of advice would be that I encourage you to persevere. It's not always going to be super easy, but I think it's totally worth it. There's a ton of opportunities in space technologies. I mean, there's so much in space that we don't know. So this is an extremely exciting field. We're constantly learning more than we did. You don't have to be good at any specific subject to be a fantastic engineer. Like I said, it's a very broad field. So if you like to problem solve, then I think that engineering would be a fantastic choice. My next piece of advice would be to be aware of imposter syndrome. And once you're aware of it, it's a lot easier to overcome. This is something that I still struggle with all the time. It was like more prevalent when I first started in aerospace engineering because I didn't know really what aerospace was, and like I wasn't entirely prepared for what the tasks were going to be. I think, you know, when I walked into a room and I was the only female of 20 engineers and the only person that was under 40, it was hard for me to find my voice and hard for me to speak up and say, hey, I have a solution to this problem, or I have a design that's going to work really well for this test. But just being aware, like figuring out that that was just imposter syndrome affecting me helped a lot in overcoming it. Just being like, you know, I deserve to be here. I deserve to take up space in this room. And I have good ideas. And they're good, and I'm allowed to say them. That's a big one. Other advice that I would give is definitely get involved in organizations and clubs that help you find out what you're interested in. I wish I had done this more when I was in high school, and maybe I would have, discovered engineering and how much I like it before college. Um, and in general, I think it just would have been a lot of fun for me to have been involved in those sorts of organizations while I was in high school. Also, to find a mentor or a teacher that can share knowledge and help you figure out which areas you're interested in. I think right now, um, in high school, your goal should really just be to figure out what you like. Is it science? Is it engineering? Is it writing, art? Just figure out what you like, because there's a lot of career opportunities all around for you guys. And then start thinking about problems and issues that you see in the world and ask yourself, how can I apply technology to fix that? You see an issue, figure out how technology could make that problem go away for you or for other people. Hopefully that helps answer the question.
And there's one question in the chat that I just want to make sure you saw.
Sure.
They asked, have you had any exceptional mentors who helped you get resources to be where you are now? If not, how did you create those opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely have had really great mentors in the past. For the nonprofit that I touched on earlier, I had a professor in college whose name is Dr. Lamori. He was from Uganda, so he was like very helpful. And he was an electrical engineering professor. He was born and raised there, and he helped a lot getting the project off the ground, and like also helped me realize how applicable engineering could be to solving not just high-tech issues, but issues in underdeveloped areas, applying your engineering knowledge to basically just helping other people. So that was really inspiring. And he was a great mentor. And then I've also had mentors within the aerospace industry. My last boss was incredibly helpful with getting me familiar with the James Webb and aerospace, and also getting me familiar with how to have a higher level of confidence in aerospace, which was really, really great.